Hello and welcome to MULCH, with me, your host Rebecca Anning-Brown. This is a weekly podcast for flower farmers who want to build a confident flower farming practice that reflects the lifestyle that you want now and in the future. Each week I'll share conversation and tips to nurture and grow you and your flower farm. I'll open conversations that flower farmers find difficult to talk about, provide approaches that will help you to make decisions, chuckle at the idiosyncrasies of our work, and always be real and honest about my own work as a flower farmer. My goal is to help you to grow a curious, confident and grounded flower farming practice that flourishes as a business that you love and are proud to shout about. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and if you like what you hear, please do leave a review and share the podcast with your flower farming friends. It really does help to grow a confident and successful flower farming community.
Hello and welcome back to MULCH. I completely planned to go back over this year's episodes and count how many times I have started an episode with "It's pouring with rain here in Leeds." So guess what? It's pouring with rain here in Leeds. Dare I ask what the weather is doing near you? Gemma and I spent the day-to-day at HQ doing cuttings and sorting the final lot of ranunculus and anemone for planting before winter sets in properly here. I do say sets in properly because frankly it's flipping freezing. But anyway, this wasn't because we don't work in the rain. Children Silver Grey are frequently surprised by how much Gemma and I do work out in all conditions. But we were propagating crops today for what we affectionately call the smelly belts. Now, the ranunculus and anemone are obvious, but the smelly belts potentially are less so. We do cut from the smelly belts a lot, but it was also part of this year's pest protection plan, and it has worked really well. So, I'm expanding the operation, and that is why we're doing so many cuttings today. It's not unreasonable to ask why that is my priority in October, when there are beds to prepare and there's seed sowing to do and bed clearance to finish and perennial planting to get on top of. But in reality, the answer is actually quite simple. We have fences, trenched chicken wire, and chicken wire 1 metre on either side of the fences in our field. That is 1.5 acres. That's a lot of chicken wire. And we still have rabbits and deer. I did think that maybe we had done what I like to call a city girl job of defences. So I asked Farmer Paul to come in and critique our work. And Farmer Paul definitely is not backwards at coming forwards. So when he said, "We've done a good job," I knew that it was because the Yorkshire rabbits are hardcore. Don't get me wrong, we actually haven't put up deer fencing because as far as I can work out, it does not work unless it has electrical bits in it and all sorts. And the land that we rent isn't near home, so that makes it difficult to kind of look after things like that. So we don't do it. But essentially, we've spent a lot of money on defences because whilst deer are beautiful and rabbits are potentially cute in the land of Beatrix Potter, in my field, both potentially eat my crops, and that means that I lose money, and we need the farm to earn money so that it can pay me and Gemma. And so the success of the cuttable smelly belt is a real win for my bank balance, and this is why it's a priority now. So that by spring, we can plant the cuttings out as part of our crop protection plan for 2025. So there are two ways, potentially three, but there are two ways that I could take this explanation for today's episode of Mulch. One way is I could talk to you about how we protect our income and financial planning. The other is how we prioritise jobs and their relative importance to me as a business owner. If the income side of things is something that you need support with, then the thing to do is to sign up to our financial planning workshop for flower farmers. There are 2 dates, one in November, one in January, and you can book both of those using the link that's in the show notes or heading to our website, which is www.silvergreyfoliage.com. Please make sure that if you are booking the financial planning workshop, you have a business plan that you are happy with and that you have an understanding of your personal and business priorities, because that affects your finances and your pricing. The two do go hand in hand, and yes, we are running 2 rounds of business planning workshops this year as well, again in November and January, and you'll be surprised, or not, to know that the business planning workshops are first and the financial planning workshops are second. There's a reason that I've done it that way. You can book your places using the links in the show notes or by heading to our website, which is www.silvergreyfoliage.com. So, I'm not going to talk to you about how we protect our income, and today I'm not going to talk to you actually about prioritising our workload, because the weather is really making me feel quite giddy, ready for a change in direction. That means that I'm going to, again, point out something that is available to help you with your prioritisation. That is the Flower Farmers Planner. Now, the Flower Farmers Planner is in the 3rd week of pre-order phase, week 4. The final week of pre-order phase is next week. After that, the price will go up, and it should be almost ready to get delivered to you. So my recommendation, if you're looking after the pennies, is that you order your copy of the Flower Farmers Planner now. Anyway, for once, I'm going to talk to you about plants. I'm going to talk to you about plants and the smelly belt approach. I do have all sorts of funny names for things that we do on our flower farm. However, the smelly belt is a new name and we coined it this season. So when we realised that all of our expensive and physically challenging attempts to keep pests out were not working, we had 3 options. Number 1, we could quit flower farming. Well, that wasn't really an option. We love it. So number 2 was to try again. But I figured that if Farmer Paul thinks that we've done a decent job and it's not working, it's probably a waste of money if we try again. And a waste of energy. Honestly, Antony and I have dug our little hearts out with 6 inch trenches, 1 foot trenches. I could go on, but anyways, quite dull. So we weren't going to do that again. So option 3 was to come up with a plan C. So plan C involved Google and books. Over Christmas, Antony and I spent hours reading blogs, which thankfully are quite short because I can't read large portions of text still. And we read books or sections of books and websites all about rabbits and deer. We read about what they like and what they dislike. We read about the plants that they apparently don't like to eat and compared this with our experience. Needless to say that our experience was inconsistent with some, but not all, of the literature. Which led us to believe that the rabbits in this particular part of Yorkshire have a refined palate compared to rabbits elsewhere in the UK and potentially the world. I completely appreciate that That may sound like I'm exaggerating. And no, we do not have rabbits in Yorkshire the size of Bugs Bunny who are eating everything under the sun. Nor do the rabbits in Yorkshire or in Headingley, Leeds and Adel have clothes that I could put on the scarecrow were I to be so lucky as to catch them. However, there did come a point in this flower farmer's life when the rabbits were happy to hold my gaze and not move. And at that point, I realised that I would have to learn to live and grow our flowers and foliage with them. So looking around, there are definitely flowers and foliage that the rabbits don't care about. And there are definitely flowers in particular that the deer love. So in our field, the deer love white roses. They won't touch the pink ones and they won't touch the yellow ones. They love perennial scabious and they love Dorcas carota. Like, evidently deer love beautiful and useful focals and fillers. But for the record, in my field, they leave Ami visnagi, which, visnaga, however you pronounce it, which is very similar to Dorcas carota in terms of looks, completely alone. Anyway, the smelly belt is exactly what it sounds like. Plants that have a particularly pungent or fragrant flower or foliage. It's a trial and error thing. I do think that what either pest will do appears to vary from author to author and site to site. That may have something to do with your soil. It may have something to do with what you feed them. But an example, and I am touching wood as I say this, in my fields they don't touch the eucalyptus, but I know that they do in others. So here is a short list of smelly things that we plant in rows between things that we find useful, important to cut for our customers, flowers and foliage, that they leave alone, but more importantly create such a waft and whiff that the rabbits and deer seem to leave the flowers and foliage, on either side alone as well. So mint, lavender, feverfew, perovskea and Achillea goldplate are my 5 top smelly belt things because they're useful to cut and they stink enough to keep away the pests. So the smelly belt theory is, I guess it's about subterfuge. We plant our flowers and foliage and surround them by rows of things that they definitely will not eat, like eryngium, and things that they can't stand the smell of, examples above. And using this method means that the majority, not all, but the majority of my precious flowers this year have been left unscathed. This is the sort of episode that Gemma would call a juicy share. Now, personally, I'm not so keen on the use of juicy as an adjective in this context, but I do know that this is flipping useful information that I hope will help you with your deer and rabbit problems. Antony and I write and produce mulch to help the flower farming community. So now it's your turn to share with your flower farming friends. Share this episode in your stories and tell them what you've learned. That way we will all lose fewer flowers and we'll all have more flowers to sell. Win-win. I'll be back next week with another episode of Mulch for flower farmers and about flower farming in practice. There is a vague possibility that next week you won't hear raindrops in the background, but I wouldn't bet on this if I were you. Wherever you are, I hope you have a fantastic week, and I'll speak to you soon. Rebecca.
Thank you for listening to Mulch. I hope that you found it useful. To find the show notes, head back to our website where you'll find links to all the things that I've been talking about in today's episode. If you're on Instagram, you can find us at Silver Grey Foliage. I would appreciate it so much if you were able to share this episode in your Instagram stories. And if you are able to leave a review, it really will help more people to get on and grow. I'll be back with you next Monday to talk about more flower farming in practice.
Rebecca.